So I mentioned in my ramble about myself that I was going to read one of my stories and never read them, because in all honesty I like to know what I'm reading before I read it out loud in front of a camera. But this one is called Average Dave Robinson, and it's about an average guy, as the title suggests. So, this is it. Dave was average at everything, he thought. He didn't excel at anything enough to get much praise for it, nor did he fail any subjects badly enough that it was called out, or had teachers constantly telling him to do better. If you asked Dave's teachers, however, he was anything but average. The points and ideas he brought forward were often completely new and unique. The things he tried without thinking were often seen as difficult or complicated skills, but he would just brush them off, as it seemed simpler to do it that way, or it's just common sense. The problem they had was being able to convince a boy so assured in his averageness that he never really noticed if a teacher complimented his work more often than his classmates, and let his parents read school reports without ever taking a look, as his father demanded. The Robinsons knew full well and good that their son had an extraordinary way of thinking things through, and always had. They were strict for that reason, because thinking in ways that most people didn't could easily attract bullies, or even people wanting to use you for it. No parents want to see their child go through that, so they hid how amazing Dave was from himself. After all, it was better to believe you were only average than be extraordinary and get attacked for it. All of Dave's friends told him he was brilliant and the best thinker among them all, but he never listened. They couldn't understand what kept him so certain of his averageness, and he couldn't see why they thought he was so gifted or unique. Each friend tried to make him see sense, and that his suggestions were things they'd never think to look at or do, but he always commented, "If you'd thought it through a little longer, I'm sure you'd have come up with something better. This is really just a guess." The biggest problem Dave had with being average was that his life seriously lacked enough average, boring days. In fact, he struggled to remember ever having a normal day without something spectacular happening in it, either through something a friend did with his help or a challenge his parents had set him. Even teachers at school had done things on rare occasions to make his day something incredible, just when he thought he might get an average day for once. One thing Dave decided once he noticed this lack was that the next time a day seemed to be average, he would do one of two things: either make it an adventure of his own, or embrace the pure averageness of the day, since every average guy had to have average days sometimes. Had to have days when there weren't any adventures to write down at the end of it. That was a decision Dave finally had to make one day after school, when nothing extremely exciting had happened, and his friends all had plans with each other or their families. At first he was firmly decided on having a completely average evening of watching TV, doing some homework and chatting to his parents over dinner. It sounded like a wonderful night off from solving problems his friends had or working on projects his parents found for him, the latest of which had been finished the night before. By the time dinner was over, however, all Dave's homework was done. He'd watched all of the television he could stand, and had run out of things he could talk about with his parents without the latest adventure to tell them about, since they'd been told about it the day before. Just to make sure it wasn't something average being forgotten from the night's activities, he got a notebook and began writing out a list of average night-in things his friends talked about doing. It contained quite a lot of things he couldn't do for various reasons, which he noted beside them, and started with things he had already done. The list went like this. Average night in activities. Number 1. Homework, already finished. Number 2. Watch TV, done enough of that to last all week. Number 3. Chat with family. But what about? I've nothing to talk about and they don't either. Number 4. Cook and eat dinner. Done. Number 5. Play board games. We don't own any. I'm not sure why. Number 6. Watch a DVD. I've already watched too much TV today. Number 7. Read a book. I've read all the books we own. Number 8. Play computer games. The last console I got has been disassembled. Number 9. Practice an instrument. We don't own any. Number 10. Phone friends. They're busy. I don't want to interrupt. Dave sat back looking at the list after he wrote it, wondering just how to rectify his lack of average things to do, which he wouldn't find mind-numbingly dumb now. Playing a board game sounded like a great idea, and he had enjoyed playing a variety around friends' houses. But how could they play a board game when they owned none? Would it still class as an average night if he made his own board game for them to play? Or should he try rereading something just to be sure it was an average night? He thought before deciding he'd rather have an interesting night than a completely average day, regardless of how much he'd wanted one before that day. Somehow that idea struck Dave as monumental and completely sensible. Why should any person or day be simply average when it could be interesting and amazing? And that is the end of the story. I want to write more about Average Dave. Sounds like an interesting character, and I want to know some of these adventures he gets up to. Wonder if you want to as well. Bye!